Okay. The legal decision letter that we received January 8th, that was included in the January board packet for everyone, was a legal decision on consent agendas. The purpose of using a consent agenda is to streamline the process for approving routine measures. The key in using a consent agenda are to limit. If a board member requests that an item be removed from the consent agenda, the item may be discussed and/or acted upon or tabled for a later time. If the item concerns the discussion of an appointment, employment, performance, evaluation, health, or dismissal of a public officer or employee, the discussion may not be held in executive session unless that person has received prior notice and an opportunity to require that the discussion be held in an open session. If the board were to convene into an executive session without giving an individual prior notice and the opportunity to require an open session, the board would have violated the individual's rights. However, the employee has only the right to require that such discussion take place in open session, and he or she may not demand to attend the executive session. Once it's removed from the consent agenda, it is voted on as a single item.
I'm asking.
So it'll be pulled out of the consent agenda, it'll be made another action item, and we'll vote on that one independently.
Yes.
Okay. Would you like that forwarded to you?
No, I know.
There we go. All right. So, you were making a motion.
I make a motion that to be removed from the consent agenda.
Hang on one second.
Removal from a consent agenda does not require a motion nor a vote be taken. It's merely you say that you don't want it on there and it moves to be discussed later, and then he can ask that with it removed, we approve the consent agenda.
He asked me what I want.
Okay. What position do you want removed?
I said I want Eric Bam, B-A-I-M.
Yep. You want that removed from the consent agenda?
Yes. And voted on separately.
Okay. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda minus the appointment of Eric Bain?
So,
Second by Mr. Kisco, second by Carly. Discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Two opposed. Kathy Van and Marola. So then we will add item E, the approval, the appointment of Eric Bain as Director of Secondary Education. Can I get a motion for that?
Motion.
Motion by Andrew, second. Fiona. Discussion. All those in favor?
what's the motion?
The motion is to approve the appointment of Mr. Bain for Director of Secondary Education. That was removed from the consent agenda.
Okay.
Yeah, I understand your confusion. The motion is made by Andrew, seconded by Fiona, to approve this appointment. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we have to do. We have to either vote yes or no to approve his appointment.
Yes,
So now we're in the discussion of that, right?
of that appointment.
Are we at liberty to ask about evaluation of this individual? Or do we have to notice him?
No, we would have to notice him and then give that person the right to an executive session or a non-executive session.
Can we comment on stuff that's been in the paper? We should be able to do that because that's
Yep.
no longer private.
It may not be the best decision, I don't, maybe it is, I don't know. Probably our lawyer would advise us not to, because you're probably getting
So you have to
goes
be
to
very
law.
It's in the paper.
I understand that, but I just think that dialogue could eventually lead to,
All this motion is whether or not you want to approve hiring him or not.
okay.
He is not yet an employee, which puts him in a different category.
He has no relationship to this board, I believe it.
He is an employee of the board. He was hired by the superintendent under her responsibility to hire. All we do is receive and accept the appointments, or we tell her we don't accept it, and then it's up to her to decide how she wants to handle it.
The
That's
law,
all you do on a consent agenda.
employment of teachers. Under the tenure law, boards of education have the right to hire teachers. The board may delegate that responsibility to the superintendent of schools. We've never delegated that responsibility to the superintendent of schools. That's why, one of the reasons why we put on a consent agenda, that person isn't hired until we, as a board, approve that hire. Whether or not the administration has been, I've tried to get more clarification
But this
over the
person is
years.
not a teacher.
What?
This person is not a teacher.
This person is it's a hire of the board of the Board of Education.
Yeah,
Superintendent
the
doesn't-
the requirement you just read is on a teacher.
Well, let me go through.
I'm just clarifying that.
However,
this
school
person's not-
person.
That's correct.
While you're reading that,
That's
I have a
the
question.
Sure.
He's hired under what contract? What are the terms of his contract?
It is an annual contract.
A one-year annual contract?
1 year annual contract, renewable
Okay.
upon review.
Like other annual contracts within the Board of Education system, does this one have the unique ability of being only annual but multi-year enforceable?
No.
So you're telling me as chairman of the board that if we evaluate, if the board has cause for wanting to remove this person in 1 year, we can do that cleanly without
This is an
litigation?
yes. This is an at-will contract.
All right,
This employee will be an at-will employee.
okay.
No, this person, we just went through this in our discussions before, which is any employee who I believe falls under the certification laws.
10-151.
Yeah, you know that. And I believe this person falls within that.
Upon
And,
termination would fall under that, yes.
well, not just termination, it's, I didn't bring all blood because I didn't think that
Yep.
that was gonna come forth.
Okay.
But I'm pretty certain that she cannot hire anyone without because otherwise we wouldn't have this as voting on it. I mean, let's go, I hate to have to do all this arguing. You probably say, why argue?
I don't know who.
Professional staffing requirement, it's responsibility.
The personnel committee vet this person?
Personnel committee has.
Okay,
not
it is
discussed any of
okay,
this.
professional staff recruiting. It is the responsibility of the superintendent, with the assistance of other district administrators, to determine the personnel needs of the district and the individual schools, and to locate suitable candidates to recommend for employment. This is our policy. So I hate to, I wish we had the board attorney here. I don't want to be making legal opinions here, but based on this reading, I believe that that is a person that the superintendent has to get the board's approval to hire. So whether or not she has correctly hired him for a short period of time, I don't know that. I don't know the legal status of that, or even what the legal status of what her behavior with this person is.
Can I ask a question,
Yeah.
what this is in response to? I mean, I don't
No,
understand why you
I
went
have
into
a
that
right,
whole-
I have a right to.
No, why you went and read all that, I don't understand. No one's arguing.
Why would I? Well, no, you are arguing. I mean, you're arguing.
Nobody argued. He asked me if I knew the terms of the contract, which I gave.
No,
to him.
no, no, you said before he brought the issue up was whether or not he was actually an employee yet of the district. I think Mr. Kisco, did you answer
That
that?
was my point, because the question
Yeah,
is
Mr.
executive
Kisco.
session and notification and things like
Right.
that.
Well, he asked whether or not he's an employee at this point in time.
Mhm.
And I'm saying, I don't believe that he can be an employee at
Okay,
this
but
time.
nobody argued that point. I mean,
Oh, I
he
thought
made
you-
a statement that and then he asked me a question on the terms of the contract, which I replied to.
Okay.
You're essentially arguing with yourself right now, so I mean, I think
I
everybody
just
else
wanna-
is in agreement
I
with
just want
you.
to try to make sure that
Okay.
that I'm not doing anything correctly, or the board is doing
Okay.
anything correctly.
Well, his question does go to process, Mr. Chairman. I mean, what
Okay.
he's saying is, at times, it seems that all that is required is for the superintendent to hire someone, and that person then is an employee of the district. Other times, it seems the board has to approve. And if we have to approve, then how can simply allowing the superintendent to sign the contract be sufficient, you know?
Yes.
At the risk of arguing with Mr. Nardi over worms, it does say that the effective date is August 15th. And there is a signed contract, so, and we have impliedly or explicitly
No.
delegated that authority to
No, we
Sharon.
didn't, because we didn't vote on it.
We do
She
put-
did that without our authorization.
No.
When did the board vote to allow her to do that?
To do what?
We,
To sign him to a contract on 8/15?
everyone else on the consent agenda is
The
no
Board of
different.
Education.
I'm only pulling this person.
Hires
If you
one
want to
person.
bring up other miss,
Okay.
Actually, can I just offer an observation?
Sure.
I would think technically the superintendent has the right to hire, she hires everybody. Well, technically she does. This goes back to the argument from whenever it was, 4 months ago, vis-à-vis this entire alignment, which is that, Mr. Chairman, and absentee superintendent, that, look at, this whole thing is, this whole edifice that we're building, it's unique. It has never been done before in Torrington. It has, as far as I can tell, almost never been done in the state of Connecticut. We really got the board, realistically, 10 people on board, really didn't get a lot of advance notice about what was going on with this. And again, that is the superintendent's prerogative to do that, and yours as chair to allow her to do that. It is your prerogative. But now that we have this edifice built, the entire cornerstone of this is this one position, an incredibly responsible position that has never existed before in this district. And the entire scheme relies on the effectiveness of this one person. And the Board of Education knows absolutely nothing about this person other than what we read about in the paper. And quite frankly, that is somewhat disturbing. And yet we have no control over this, but we are in, so what I'm saying is this process has got to change.
Well, I
And
will say though that everyone was invited here an hour early to meet all the new recommended administrators that were all here.
Well, some of us,
So that
as you
you
know,
could-
have a hard time getting here an hour earlier,
I-
and it's for something this critical. This is putting a stamp on our educational system for years to come, years to come. And it shouldn't be dealt with like planning a fundraiser for the soccer team. You know, well, you get here an hour before and we're gonna discuss where we're gonna have it. This has much more import and impact than that, number one. And then just in general, you know, I find this is related, you know, it's slightly off point, but it just continues to be in the papers, here at the board meeting. We cannot continue to have an absentee superintendent who refuses to talk to the media, who refuses to talk to her own board about such critical. The public has the right to know about why this particular person is getting this incredibly responsible. Why? Of all the candidates, why him? You know, building support within the community is a huge part of what the superintendent is paid to do.
Is there a committee that hired?
Excuse
That's
me?
my point. If the board wanted to hire this position, the board should have voted to have the board be the committee. How can I say if this guy's qualified or not? I wasn't on the committee, I've never seen his resume, but now you guys here want us to decide if the interview committee picked the right candidate? How do we know? We don't know anything about him.
Unanimously picked.
I don't know, was it, it was unanimous? It was unanimous.
17 people.
17 people. So how are we to judge if he's
I'm
good,
just saying,
bad,
that's not
indifferent?
the issue. The only issue that's
The
relevant.
issue is why is this position different than any of the other positions?
Because-
When we
That's
hire
not-
principals,
Because
we have a
that's-
committee.
because
That's not-
that's within my
This person's in charge of
prerogative.
6, he's in
as a-
charge of 6 principals, essentially. I'm sorry, Andrew, go on, I'm sorry, yeah.
I'm not trying, I don't want to go to talk about the merits of this person as a professional educator or administrator. All I'm saying is I have a right to have his name withdrawn so that I, as a board member, can vote yes or no on this appointment. That's all that really needs to be discussed. If other board members want to discuss the merits of his candidacy, that's
That's exactly what's happening. You had the right, you were given the right. you
Right.
did
I
it.
mean, well, I'm just
So
trying-
There's no,
Yeah.
Mr. Cavanero is questioning the whole setup of the situation.
The process for selecting. I think it's naive to say that this is no different than hiring a middle school media specialist. It's a hell of a lot different than that. It's a hell of a lot different than
What
that.
about principals?
Hmm?
What about principals? Every principal hired has been hired under the same
And just because,
program. I mean, it's
Right.
going all the way back, I mean, how far back do you want to go? I mean, it's.
I don't know if it's,
Assistant superintendents are hired this way too. There's a committee
Well,
formed, the
principal-
committee
just
recommends.
because
But
the
we have
board,
five- hold on.
year
I have
after,
to-
okay, I'm sorry.
but principals are traditional staff members with
What about
a traditional
assistant
set of
superintendents?
responsibilities. There's nothing traditional
What about
about this.
assistant superintendents?
Excuse me?
Assistant superintendents,
These
same
people here?
process. Assistant superintendent, when we've hired them in the past.
No,
Same
no,
process.
no.
Absolutely it is.
No.
No.
There's a committee formed,
Yep.
the committee makes a recommendation, the superintendent either moves that recommendation forward to the board, or they don't.
And the board, yeah, then the board has the right to look at that recommendation and vote yea or nay.
Which is what we're
It's
trying
part
to
of the
do right
consent
now.
agenda.
Well, we can't because it's
But
already
you
been
can't
there.
have board members voting on this guy's qualifications to have this position when this board has never seen his resume.
Well, and
That's
that's
irresponsible.
That's precisely the problem. No,
Okay.
what's irresponsible is the board not having seen this guy's resume and
No,
suddenly be irresponsible.
Because we're saying
suddenly
we're
be
confident in the
irresponsible
committee
for
and
not
the
just a
superintendent in the
school,
process.
not just a
Then-
school,
are you
but a
available-
combination of.
Are you available for a meeting tomorrow night?
No, I'm actually working tomorrow night, and I will not be at the Torrington Democratic Town Committee meeting because of that. We have our picnic tomorrow night. Doesn't
Well, that's
everybody
fine,
know
but
that?
Monday morning, when school opens, we have to have this position filled.
That's not my,
So let's
that's
vote
not
on
my.
it now.
I'm asking you when you can have a meeting. If you want to sit down
Why
and
do
have
we
an
need a
executive
meeting?
session,
Excuse me, why do we need a meeting?
because he says it's irresponsible for the board to vote on this gentleman without seeing his,
Then I want to see every single person's resume on the consent agenda. I mean,
No,
this is
all you
ridiculous.
need to do is just take the vote. If it's 9-1, then you get your way.
you had your discussion. This is now Mr. Cavanero's discussion. Mr. Cavanero is asking for further information than you did. We're not just running on yours anymore. This is an open discussion of all the
I
rest of the
think you're
board
right.
members.
I-
Yeah, and that's,
I'm just feeling that from a Board of Education as a group, and this is unique. I'm saying this is not hiring assistant principals. You have one, you know, everybody knows what that role, what that responsibility is for, what that set of roles and responsibilities for that position. A principal, the same thing, assistant principal, the same, a nurse, a secretary, a media specialist. This has never existed before.
it's a principal of 2 schools. There's been
Right.
principals of multiple schools all over Connecticut.
Right.
There's been principals of multiple schools within Torrington.
Right, with looping assistant principals, none of this has ever been done
But
before.
that
I
has
just think
nothing to
it'd
do
be
with the
foolish.
hiring a director of 2 schools. We've had principals covering multiple schools in this district at elementary levels.
I
We've
just
had
think
it.
it-
So,
I think
Paul,
it
what you're
merited
saying is you
discussion.
don't have confidence in the
Well,
committee.
we're having it.
So what you're saying is you don't have confidence in the committee that reviewed the candidates and brought this one forward unanimously.
Who's
and
on the
recommended
committee?
to the board.
I don't know who's on the committee.
I don't know who's on the committee.
So therefore,
But
by.
I trust the committee
You
to
trust the
bring this
committee that you don't
candidate
even know who
forward.
was on the committee.
Hold on.
What's your?
I could get my 3 brothers on a committee, and I guarantee you, they will support anybody I recommend. Does that give you confidence?
Mr. Campbell?
I was just.
Exactly.
I was just going to say that it was actually 2 committees that were formed as focus groups that were compiled from all stakeholders. So there were middle school and high school teachers on each. There were middle school and high school parents on each. There was secondary administrator on each, and Sue Lebonsky was also on. And the candidates went through a multi-step process where the first issue they were given was an email from a parent of a possible situation they may have to deal with, and put a written response together. They then went and were questioned by each of these focus groups, and the focus groups reported to each other, and as it was described, this candidate was unanimously put forward as the candidate. So I'm merely explaining the process.
How many people were vetted this way? How many of the candidates were vetted this way?
All,
Seven.
everybody.
7?
Yep. So we had
And there
one
was a board
round.
member on the committee?
Excuse me,
There were two.
yes.
There were 2 board
Sorry,
members.
I left that off. There were 2 board members, one on each. So I'm merely describing the process, just so everyone has a fundamental understanding of the situation.
Not that it's relevant to this conversation to a degree, but are you saying that this job was not offered to anyone prior to him?
It was.
It was offered to someone else.
There was 2 separate rounds of
There were 2
interviews.
separate rounds.
I mean, I don't even want to go into this, but when you start making,
Well, you did,
when you
so.
start making factual statements that he was the choice, then let's elaborate. He was the choice from what to what? He was the first choice or the second choice? Because you offered the job to someone else before. So what are you saying? What's truthful here?
The first round of interviews was 3 candidates. There was a candidate brought forward, the candidate declined the position. Then the position was posted a second time, interviews were brought in, 4 candidates were brought together in front of the same interview committees, and this gentleman came out as the #1 candidate.
If you think that's transparent in the way you handled this, fine. You know, if that's the way the 3 of you up there think that's
We weren't
transparent.
even on the
They weren't even
committee.
involved in
We
it.
were on the committee.
Well, you're saying that it's so transparent that this committee
I'm saying that this is the
unanimously,
process we have used for all of our hires.
and just because this
So
board
if you-
over the last several years wants to be lazy at best, if not
Lazy?
just negligent of their duties, which is to
Whoa.
Yes.
To negligent of your duties, we're
No,
gonna have
no,
that
I'll be
conversation.
glad
We're
to
gonna
have that
conversation at another,
Excuse
we're
me.
gonna have that
Good.
conversation at another time.
But this
Right
is,
now,
this
we're gonna
is,
move this to a vote.
this is
We're
our
moving it to a
policy.
vote.
This is our
Discussion is
law.
over.
Point of
We're moving into a vote. All those in favor of appointing or approving Mr. Payne's appointment? Opposed? 5-2. Done.
Thank you.
Comments for the good of the order. Mr. Cavanero?
Yes, I believe the superintendent needs to do a much better job at talking with the press, explaining what it is she's doing, and communicating with the public. I'm tired of seeing unavailable for comment, unavailable for comment, unavailable for comment, unavailable for comment. It is a very significant part of her responsibility as the chief operating officer of this district to meet with the press and communicate with the public. Please convey my sentiments.
Andrew?
One is, Ms. Danielle, do you have the final numbers on what the either deficit or surplus amount was in the health benefits?
No, I do not.
This is not a time for questions, this is comments. If you have a comment, you would like it moved forward, that's great.
Well, when
You would
should
like
I
to
have
know?
asked her to give us that information?
You can ask for the information, but we'll get it to you, but she's
Okay,
not.
well, I'm asking for the, now
That's
the
fine.
comment is, I would like to have the board consider whether or not they would demand or request that all communication that takes place between the superintendent and the chairman of the board be documented and memorialized by the board's attorney on what the issue was and his opinion of the law, and it be sent to all board members every time the superintendent and the chairman of the board has a conversation with the board's attorney. Thank you.
I don't understand what you're asking.
What, okay, you have a conversation, you call up the board's attorney, or the superintendent calls up the board's attorney, and you want to know whether or not the board can pull from the consent agenda a name. You talk to the board's attorney, he tells you over the phone, yes or no. I'm stating that what I would want is that the attorney memorialize in a letter stating what the question was and what his opinion was to convey back to the board, and that every time the superintendent or the chairman of the board, has one of these conversations, the board's attorney, which represents each member of the board as a group, we should all be aware of what the attorney is telling either the chairman of the board or the superintendent. It may cost more money, but the process of learning from this is worth the cost. I mean, you're already spending the money to have the conversation and for him to think about it and formulate. It shouldn't, you know, if it takes him a couple of minutes more to put in writing what he understood your question to be and what his opinion was that he stated to you, should not be that cost prohibitive for him.
Do you want this as an item for upcoming agenda for the board to discuss it, or you just want this to be a general comment?
I would like for you to put it on
Then that would
the
be under
agenda.
items for upcoming agenda, not comments for the good of the.
Well, it's a comment for the good of the order, and then I guess,
I mean, you've been seeing these for 6 years. You should understand the protocol.
we
by
always
now.
do things a little differently.
Do we really?
Yeah, from
We
the
would
6
be asked
years.
for items for
I mean,
the
I'll be
upcoming
glad to
agenda,
tell you
under
how
items for
we,
the upcoming agenda.
I'll be glad to tell
All
you
right,
how we
let's
did
tell me
things
again in
6
about
years
5
ago.
minutes. John?
Well, are we doing it or weren't? We're gonna put it on the agenda for the next.
You're gonna ask for it under items for upcoming
Okay.
agenda. We're doing comments. John?
I have been disappointed with this whole reorganization process as well as the selection process. I share the concerns on the other side of the table, but I think we came up with an excellent person for the job who will do an excellent job and help the school system improve in ways it needs to do. So overall, I'm satisfied with the result. Not that the ends justify the means, but I'm satisfied with the result.
Thank you. Carl?
Let's all play nicely together.
No.
Chris, none. Ellen?
Nothing.
Fiona?
I just wanted to state, to thank Danielle. She is now on the budget. If you look on July, she's breaking down all our expenses by building, and it was a big eye-opener to see what each building is actually costing us. It's in this, the first one in July, so I don't know if anyone noticed that, but she has the total at the top, and then you can see each school. So, thank you for that. Thank you.
Okay. Committee reports, personnel, not here. Policy.
We're reviewing field trips, bylaws, wellness. We have extracurricular coming up. I've been asked to do something on school lunches and donations.
All right. Greetings.
We've had a quiet summer, but now that we're starting school, we're going to be very busy again. We have 2 cases going to arbitration and another grievance, I guess. It was got delivered tonight, so we're busy.
School improvement.
School improvement. The next thing I want to look at, we've taken a bit of a backseat with Ms. Monaco no longer being here. She was driving our agenda for quite a while. The 2 things I want to look at, whistleblower policy, and I would like at the next meeting for the superintendent to at least frame that issue. I still want I want to review what we now have. It's really part of policy, but since policy's got so much, and since this is a major concern for me, I just want to get in place some sort of, I want to see what we have for an existing policy. I want to see what the state recommends. I want to see what we can possibly do to improve it, to ensure that our staff members, teachers in particular, have the ability to come before the school improvement committee with concerns, not evaluative of staff, but evaluative of programs. I think going forward, this is going to be hugely responsible. I've seen too many times administrators having to buy into a particular program that ultimately doesn't really work. And I've had many teachers over the years come up to me and really want to be able to speak frankly and honestly, but afraid to do so. And I think the only way you can get if you want a real effective whistleblower policy, I think the Board of Education has got to step up and back it. It can't be just there on a piece of paper somewhere in Hartford. It's got to be a true commitment from this board to support and back and know, allow teachers to know that we have their back, that they come forward with information that may be contrary to general perceptions. We'll leave it at that. So anyway, that's what I want to put on for the next school improvement committee. And quite frankly, the thing that bothers me most, and I don't know if this is really policy, but getting this athletic code, I really, really, really want to get that thing nailed down. I am completely unhappy with what was brought forward to the board tonight. I was unhappy that it was brought literally days before the beginning of school, before the beginning of the athletic season. You know, I've been pushing for this thing since the damn spring. It does not in any way, shape, or form have the kind of teeth and guts that I think we need in this policy. And I don't know if we review this through school improvement. It's really not policy. So, Ms. Ona, as head of policy, when do you think you could get to this? I know we've been at it before, but it really just, the more I think about it, the more it angers me.
2 or 3 months.
2 or 3 months is not good enough. Okay, the school improvement committee, you're on it, Andrew. It's just the two of us right here. Do you want to look at this? It's not, we look at it with a view toward moving this to policy.
Yes.
We can vet it, okay? And then we'll make the recommendation to policy. Want to do that?
Yes.
Okay, if you could put that, Mr. Chairman. So we're going to look at a
Well,
whistleblower
you're gonna
policy.
make your agenda for your meeting.
Yeah.
And you're gonna send it in with whatever you
I
want.
will send
on
it
the
to you,
agenda.
send it to you, and then you'll have the
It'll go
administration
through the
notice.
school.
Yep.
It's
Go
fine.
through the administration.
2 items.
Okay. Budget.
We had a chance to review the 12-13 academic year financials, and out of a budget of over $67 million, we came up with $41,000 to the good, which I say is excellent budgeting. We are having the discussion with the superintendent starting in September of ways in which we're going to start the budget process earlier, because we've never done it before. So we're looking at, the first meeting will be what we can start earlier, and then we start rolling that out. And working, as Ellen said, with policy to address issues with school lunches.
Thank you. Ed Connection.
That connection is underway for the upcoming school year. Policy Council for Head Start, Early Head Start met last Tuesday. I went to that. Things are exactly where they should be. And the Ed Connection Board of Directors itself will meet this next Thursday, a week from tomorrow. And that year will get underway too. But nothing exciting going on at this point.
Okay. PHS oversight.
The classic moving target this summer, which has really stopped much from happening. But we'll be starting again. I've already arranged to, haven't set a date, but told Mr. Bangman would be calling him to sit down, talk to him, and start from there.
Okay. Okay, to wellness. Juvenile court update.
It's just the same, which is I'm having trouble really communicating with the people that I need to communicate with so as to get some answers. I'm thinking and working on it.
Okay. Items for the upcoming agenda. We have financial statements, committee reports, tag restructuring. We're going to have a lawsuit update in September. We were asked to give a presentation on the Connecticut State Statute 10-151 at our last set of meetings. And you want the Board of Ed to consider all communications between the board chair or the superintendent with the board attorney be memorialized in a letter form.
From the attorney, yes.
We'll add that to it. Yeah, sure.
I'd like us to look at our adult education program because when we updated the surrounding towns, but the state is not reimbursing us fully. So we had a pretty good deficit in the adult ed, and we're mandated to do it. I'd like to find out why we're putting the bill for a portion of it and not getting reimbursed by the state.
When is the formal evaluation of superintendent? I mean, it seems like we're long overdue on that.
We're waiting for personnel to start that.
Start it?
Yep.
When was it due?
May.
Statute-wise, it's every year at least, right? Yep.
It's been mentioned to the committee chair to get that underway. It hasn't started.
That propane contract has been, and there's going to be budget transfers Oh, okay. Okay.
Budget, whatever Chris wishes for.
I'd like to know whether or not we can put on the agenda the issue of going forward with looking at new candidates for the superintendent's position starting at the expiration of her contract, which comes at the end of this year. This is in no way referencing that I'm implying that I want or don't want. I just think that the process should always take place, which is to have an evaluation of whether or not the board wants to go out and see what other candidates are out there who would like to serve as superintendent of the district.
So you want to add an agenda item for the Board of Ed to discuss if they want to test the waters for a superintendent?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think it's just a learning experience. Whether or not if you tell applicants that you learn what's out there, the only way you learn what's out there and what ideas other people have on running a school district is to have a search.
So you want to do that before you evaluate?
No, I'm not. I don't consider this in any way part of an evaluation process. Whether or not we like her or don't like her, I just think that we, as a board, and I would hope that we would always do this as a board, is when the superintendent's contract is in its final year, the board would, as a matter of practice or procedure, would just set up a practice to put out there that we're going to be reviewing applicants, and it should be open for everyone who wants to apply for this job.
So the superintendent would be reapplying for their job?
Yeah, I think that's the way it should be. It has nothing to do with whether or not
Well, that's an agenda item. We discuss it now, we don't need to put it on the agenda.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Okay, anything else? Future meetings, policies, September 4th, school improvements the 11th, budgets the 11th, personnel's the 4th, regular board meeting is September 18th, motion to adjourn. Chris, second by Carl, all those in favor? Opposed? Unanimous.